Let's get on to something much more interesting, the creative stuff. Over to Matt.
I'm a partner at Lightsail VR along with Robert Watts, who's sitting up here. And GoPro approached us about wanting to do a narrative project in 360, which is a little different for them because they do a lot of documentary work, they do a lot of action sports videos, and so doing something with an original script, the writer who's also here tonight, and you know, with characters and stuff, it was kind of like right up our alley because at Lightsail, we kind of formed this company because we wanted to make entertaining narrative content. The kind of popcorn movies that I grew up on and that I love is the kind of stuff that I want to make, but I want to do it in 360. So we set out to make a VR pirate adventure because what could be more fun than pirates? Not to mention we could be on a tall ship, and considering the company's called Lightsail, thought it seemed kind of appropriate. So a little background just about it is, in general, these are my opinions on narrative VR, and they're just that, they're opinions. There's so much experimentation and awesome stuff going on in this space right now that I encourage everyone to keep an open mind. This is our particular point of view. We do lots of different things, and we're constantly experimenting. But ultimately, we believe that narrative 360 video needs the same secret sauce that every other storytelling medium needs, which is conflict, characters, a plot.
Sex.
Always helps.
Yeah.
And so we kind of try to approach things story first. And the other thing that we like to do is we like to think of a point of view. You know, Neil brought up a great point about presence. And presence is one of the coolest things that VR gives, and it's something that's truly unique to the medium. So we think about, okay, you're in this scene, well, who are you? What's the rules of engagement? Are you a ghost? You're just observing like a voyeur? Are you a person? Are you inhabiting someone who's a part of the scene? Could be a little difficult since you can't interact and talk back, you know? But what are those rules? Are you a found footage piece, like a camera, you know, that someone puts there? And I think in the early days of immersive cinema, this helps the audience know, what's my contract here? Because it's not like at the theater where you go, you sit, you watch the screen, there's what you're doing. Here you can actually look around. And you want to give your audience as many like psychological reasons to know where to look. And I think trying to tell them who they are helps them know like, oh, I'm this, so I should be looking for that. And they play this kind of psychological game with themselves. To that point, we want to avoid them being confused. One of the things I hate most about 360 videos when I'm watching one is I go, where am I supposed to look? I feel like I'm missing something. I have extreme FOMO in watching bad VR. Like, I'm like, oh, is it over there, or is it over there? And I feel lost. So as much as possible, paying attention to what your story is a really important part. Editing, directing, writing, all these are tools of the trade that we use as traditional filmmakers that we can bring to the 360 world. So to the people who say that you can't be a director in VR, I have to disagree with you. I think you can certainly direct and be a director. You're not just an influencer. Just because there's no frame doesn't mean you can't be a director. You can take cues like sound, blocking your actors, the production design and the locations that you shoot, even lighting to a large extent can help guide your audience where you want them to look. Because, look, we exist in a 360 world right now, right? And you guys are looking at me, I hope. You know, you're not looking behind you, right? So I'm hopefully the most interesting thing on the screen. Therefore, I'm directing your attention here. You can do the same thing in VR filmmaking. In that sense, I'd like, you know, it's often said like, it's like theater, you know? There's more like using actors and, you know, actors who know how to like give attention to others and know how to like do a performance all in one, which is something I'm gonna get to next. The other issue in the early days of 360 video is all these technical, all these technical issues. The technology is moving at an astounding rate. Every day there's a new camera, there's a new technique. Who knows? Maybe in like 6 months we won't even need to stitch anymore, and then I will have wasted all that time and energy for nothing. But what we like to do is we like to think of story solutions to these problems. So let's take this pirate adventure here. GoPro came to us and they said, hey, we want to do a fight sequence We want it to have a moving camera. We want to feel like you're in the middle of the fight. And my mind initially went, wow, that's impossible, because you're going to have people very close to the camera, which is a challenge. You're going to move the camera with GoPros, which can be a challenge, because when you move the camera, you can see these nasty, visible stitch lines, which for me, they kind of ruin the experience, because they take me out of that presence, right? So, and then also, since it's a fight scene and you have stunts and stuff, how do you cut and reset? How do you hide the cuts to create a seamless experience? Or how do you make the cuts feel organic? So we accomplish this in two ways. The first thing is we work with the writer to write something that works in the space. So this piece is a story. It's a pirate telling a story, and then we cut to the moments that he's talking about. So this gives us a natural cut and reset point, where I can do a stunt, and then cut to the other scene, and then I can reset, which really helps as a director. And then the other kind of brilliant thing, I hope, that we figured out is, how are we going to hide all these stitch lines? We don't have the budget or the time to spend, rotoscoping every single thing out there. So we decided that we shoot on a camera. It's this guy. It's a 10 GoPro rig, and there's 7 cameras around. And we said, well, what if we designed our story to be around a bird that sits in a cage? But instead of filming it in a real cage, what we'll do is we'll add the cage in post, and we'll put the bars of the cage where all the stitch lines are. So that way, you just won't see them.
See, genius, right?
It was obviously it's a little bit of a one-trick pony, but the idea is to solve your technical problems not by saying you can't do it, but to say, like, hey, here's a narrative, story-driven way that's organic to the story, that's not going to take people out of the experience. Because as soon as someone watches it and goes like, oh, where am I supposed to be looking? Or, oh, why didn't they do that? Then you've lost them. You've lost the art of storytelling, and that's our job as creative people, to keep people immersed not only in the 360 environment, but emotionally as well. So, a little bit into this, we shot on a 10 GoPro Hero 4 cameras. These are the settings we use for the 2 different scenes. It's 10 cameras, it's 20 cards, it's 30 batteries. So there's a lot of little tiny parts to keep track of, so being organized is really, really key. And you gotta shoot it, and it's kind of real time. So the final kind of, before I get into the tools, the final story thing I kind of want to touch of is editing and pacing in VR. And I know a lot of you work in post, I do too, you're editors, and that actually makes you a pretty good director in VR, because you understand pacing, and you understand how a scene should play out. Because you kind of gotta nail it on set. Like, if an actor doesn't pick up their cue, it's pretty challenging, unless you've got a cage to help hide some stitch lines, to retime performances. And you can't cut a performance together with like some close-ups and some reverses, and you can't take 2 different performances and mash them together, because it kind of destroys that sense of presence if you cut. So just something to keep in mind, that you want to do a lot of rehearsing if you're involved in a VR project. And if you're an editor and you're working with someone who's shooting it, maybe consider being on set. Maybe consider working a little bit with the director. Maybe talk about pacing ahead of time. So enough about the story stuff. I'm gonna do a little overview of some of the tools, and then I'm gonna get into the software and show you some of the techniques and tools and secret sauce that we use at Lightsail VR to help tell really creative stories. So the first thing is, when we get all our footage back from our 10 GoPros, which we shoot on, you got to stay organized. And I think Michael brought up Post-Haste earlier tonight, which is a fantastic tool from Digital Rebellion that I use to keep everything organized. Because there's 10 cameras full of data, then there's their audio files, and then you're doing stitching, and it's kind of a bit of a nightmare. The other program that we use a lot of is this 360 CamMan software. 360 Heroes actually makes the rig, the 10-camera rig that we shoot with. And the brilliant part of this particular software is not necessarily that it copies the files back to your drive, which is nice, and it names everything for you in a really great way. But if you see right down below here, each take, each camera has, each file has a frame, right? How many frames were captured. And if you're shooting with 10 cameras, the likelihood of you accidentally bumping the record button on one of them is very high. So this one allows you to take that bad take that you accidentally bumped or a camera failed and mark it as a not good, and then you can line them up accordingly. So I would highly recommend software like this, otherwise you may grow as white of a head as Neil.
Definitely will.
So then you take all these files, you throw them into Pano Video. It's a complicated process I'm not really going to get into now, but needless to say, spending a couple hours on the web watching some videos, like, it's not terribly complex. I think the majority of people can pick it up. What you do with it creatively, that becomes challenging, but you want to go from your 10 videos to your equirectangular, which is the image on the right there. So without further ado, I think what I would like to show you guys is just some of the cool stuff that we're working with and how we kind of bring it to life in Premiere, you know, doing all the fun stuff. Something else I would also just really quickly mention is that the jellyfish that Neil was talking about really was a big part of this GoPro project, because we had so much data, such a tight turnaround, and the project we did before, we didn't have shared storage, and we were shuttling things from drive to drive to drives, and we had multiple versions of things, and a lot of stuff get lost. So having a centralized storage system, also because we need all that space, would highly recommend it is worth its weight in gold. So the first thing I want to really stress is that once you get everything stitched, editing is just like normal. Like, it uses Premiere. It's a 2:1 aspect ratio. Yes, it looks a little funny, but I promise you, as you look at it, it's kind of like the Matrix. Like, you just kind of will start to see it unwrapped after a while and know how it's going to look. There are fantastic tools, such as Colorize, where you can now pan around your scene. And you can see me here. I'm the director, very serious. You can see that I have lights. You can see that I have a fuzzy windsock over some binaural microphones, and this is the tripod. There's more lights. So you can see kind of how that works. This is what we got right out of the camera. This is the original raw stitch. You can see this like nasty little stitch line right here. But overall, this looks actually pretty good. And this is what it looks like. Now, the process of editing and creating in Premiere is a lot of compositing. But it's a lot of very simple compositing that doesn't require complex After Effects stuff. It's really just trying to build things. And the reason you do this is because, for example, in this scene, I wanted lights in the scene. We're in the belly of a ship. How am I going to make it bright enough to shoot on GoPros? So we do a trick that's called shooting 180. Because you don't need to always capture the entire 360-degree sphere all at once. You can cheat, right? Because filmmaking is all about cheating. So what we did is we shot this scene 180, and then we, took out the lights and relit the back and took me out, and I stood on the other side, and we shot the other side of it and put half of it in, which created that. So now you can see that there is the other half of the ship. And if I turn around in Colorize, I'm gone. And everything's lit. It looks pretty good.
You just don't move the rig? Is that the answer?
What's up?
You just don't move the rig? Is that the answer?
Yeah, you just don't move the rig. And you actually use this metal skybox rotate sphere, so if you did bump the rig a little bit, you could tweak it back a little bit. We'll get into that a little bit. So then the other thing is here is the brilliance of the cage. Boom, which conveniently covers up all the muck at the bottom, like the barrel that it was actually sitting on, and the little tripod and the windsock. And there we go, there's our cage. And it helps just give you kind of a frame of reference, so we have all of our lines here. If I look down here, I'll see that I actually have this like little tiny stitch line. So the way that, stitching in VR works, right, is, close stuff's more difficult than, there's close stuff, there's far stuff called parallax. I really don't want to get into it right now, but needless to say, you do have to do several passes of stitching to get it right, because you'll never get the whole thing perfect all at once. So we just render out a little patch, and we just put that right there. And luckily for me, on this one, since I have this cage, I can just create my little mask right there and keep that nice and contained. And then the final step, of course, is I just do a little color correction, right like that. Now, I like to do my color correction currently right in Premiere because I think the Lumetri tools are really good. I think with the latest update, they're even better. And you can go out to Resolve too and do it that way. It really works well. But it's very similar to what you normally do. There's no secret special sauce except that your files they look a little funny.
Actually, it may be worth just mentioning one thing here. GoPros shoot MP4, right?
Right.
A wonderful delivery codec, not too good as acquisition and painful for editing, right? So even though we shoot in MP4s, there's probably a conversion process we want to go through. And Matt, maybe you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so what we do, the workflow is this, right, in general. So I bring everything into AutoPano Video, and we actually generate still an MP4 just for the offline files, just to edit with, because they're a lot smaller. But when it comes time to do this final compositing, and it comes time to make, work with the media that we know and the takes that we love, I go back and I re-render as Cineform files, because you get a little bit more latitude, they're less compressed, they look a little nicer, they color and grade a little better, and the H.264 has a maximum 4K resolution, and when we shoot on 10 GoPros, we get 8K. And getting that 8K resolution and being able to render the Cineforms out at 8K allows me to super sample that, not because I want to reframe the shot, but because when I scale that down, I get less noise in my shadows, I get a little better color. I just find that the image looks nicer overall, a little sharper. So let me show you just a couple of these metal tools real quick in terms of editing. And I have here, let's see here. So I've got this scene here, right? This is our below deck scene. And you'll notice as I play this scene out, right? And we cut to the next scene. First of all, it looks crazy, and I apologize for that. It should look, there's the whole thing without the cage. But you'll see Gilbert's there in the center, and then when we cut into this scene, there's nothing here. Gilbert's all the way back over here. So you're looking at Gilbert, he's telling the story, and then when we cut to the scene, we're a little disoriented, because he's not in the scene, yet we're still hearing him, we're still talking to him. This center point of the frame is what you see when you look forward in the headset. This frame edge here is what you see when you look right behind you. Now, since not everyone has a swivel chair VR station in their house like I do, I imagine that most people are not going to want to do this constantly when watching a piece. So what I use is this great plugin from Metal right in Premiere called Rotate Sphere. And what we do here is we just take this, let me just pop that on, and we can actually just rotate the sphere just like this. And all this really does is offset it. So now I put Gilbert right in the center, so that when we cut from here to here, there he is. Again, with our cage right up there, looks pretty good, and it's hiding all those. If I turn these guys off, you can actually see where it is hiding. One other thing that I use is something called Project 2D plugin. This takes any 2D graphic. It could be a text, it could be callouts, it could be any 2D graphic you want, and it projects it in the 3D space or 360 space. It remaps it essentially into this equirectangular. So, for example, if you look right up here, I've got the camera rig tripod system that would be near impossible to play it out, to roto out. It would take a lot of time and work. So we do a little bit of a cheat, and we basically created a piece of rope. So let me get my rope up and turn off the cage. So there's my rope right here. And what I want to do is go ahead and use this tool, Project 2D, to just throw it right up and cover this. Now, if I were just to move that rope, it would look really funny. So if I took this, for example, and I just went up here like that, and put it up there, and then went to go check it out, see how it comes to a pinpoint here? It looks really dumb, because it's not mapping it onto the equirectangular space. So what we'll do instead is, we'll come back here, let's just undo that, and we'll turn on the Project 2D. And all I've done here is I've tilted this 90 degrees. So this started here at 0, and I went 90 degrees up. Now it's up top. And now when I go back here, There it is. It looks perfect. It's right up there. So by the time I then take and I put back on my cage, and I do a little color correction. Oops, no, please don't open that. Okay, looks pretty good. There we go. That's color. There we go. So that looks pretty, it covers it fairly well. And there's our cage. You see below, so on and so forth. So I know I'm running out of time, and I kind of want to show you this piece. There's a lot that I could continue to talk at. And Neil and I are going to go way more in depth on all these techniques, but
July the 23rd, come along if you want to see this.
suffice it to say that you can edit in VR. You can be a creative storyteller. You can tell narrative stories. You just cannot forget character and plot and story. Use the tools that you've developed and just think about things in a different way. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and go here and load up the, I guess this is actually the first time this is being seen in public. And with a brand new projector. This is Foul Seas. I'm going to drive the 2D 360 video experience. So I hope I won't go too fast for you, but if you haven't had a chance, we have them on the headsets upstairs, and on those headsets we have spatial audio, which is the last quick point I want to make. Remember, you hear in 360 degrees, so audio is 10 times more important than the video. And we did mix this using Dolby Atmos. What we have upstairs is not Dolby Atmos, but it is still spatial. So you'll hear someone coming from your right ear, you turn, and then sounds like they're coming from in front of you. Here we go. Oh, I gotta hit play back over here.
Listen up, me lovelies. Let me show you the greatest treasure in the whole bloody world. Show us the goods.
Our tide is coming, fellas. Behold. A real beauty, ain't she?
It's a bloody bird.
Not just any bird, Ernie, me lad. Chantilly, the crown jewel of the Queen's menagerie. She'll fetch a hefty king's ransom, wouldn't she? But don't you fret me, pretty lass. There's no amount of doubloons that I'd trade you for.
We've sailed through hurricanes!
Through Her Majesty of her own vessel.
Yeah! For biscuits! Yeah!
And all that for a bloody bird?
Fancy a drink, birdie?
Wait, the greatest treasure was a bird.
Aye, but that isn't really the story. This is how I fought off the greatest mutiny that any captain has ever faced. Shh! Chantilly, let me tell the tale. As I was saying, the lily-livered scum had shown their true colors. But I still had a few loyal mates at my back. So we tied up Chantilly to the boom for safekeeping as the fight raged on.
Bumbles, bring up the rear! I bet you'd be good in a pigeon fight. Shut the door, football, you favorite tag!
I ne'er went overboard. Your memory's fading faster than a Caribbean sunset, Jibbers. One too many blows to the head, matey.
I still think you'd make a good pigeon pie.
Now, ladies, hold me close, for this next part ain't for the faint of heart. My narrow escape to the greatest bloodbath that ever transpired on the high seas.
No! Back! We've got this! Take that, Gentilips!
The murderous bands of ruffians huddled around me. It was looking like it'd be me last day as captain of the ship.
Aye, and it
was, you scallywag?
Giovanna, I was just...
I believe you forgot a captain there.
Well...
You're not the captain.
Well...
What about Chantilly? Crown jewel of the royal menagerie.
Ha! Nothing but a brass farthing bird. He bought her in Barbados for half a cent. Don't believe every tale you hear, lassies. Potatoes don't peel themselves.
Aye, aye, Captain.
Thank you.